Well, hello again, fight fans, and welcome to another edition of the Speed Bag. Today, a segment I like to call, This One's Worth Paying Attention To. Now, as you may have heard, on Saturday night at World Series of Fighting, former UFC middleweight contender Yushin Okami will take on former UFC welterweight contender John Fitch. It's a fight that's kind of a title eliminator, according to WSOF officials. They say the winner of this one will probably take on Jake Shields for the vacant WSOF welterweight title. And that's why, according to WSOF matchmaker Ali Abdelaziz, this one is about legacy. It's about who will get to call himself some form of a champion now that he's on the backside of his career. And here you have a collection of guys who all got pretty close to the UFC title, but never quite got there. And, you could argue that, sure, maybe Abdelaziz is exaggerating what it means to be a WSOF champion. I mean, I'm not saying that belt means nothing. It's definitely one of the few organizations that matters, and being a champion there would matter. But if you can name all the current WSOF champions right now without looking it up, congratulations, you are such a hardcore fight fan, you should maybe be a little embarrassed about it. But for Fitch especially, I think you can make the case that this one does really matter. As you may have heard, Fitch is one of the fighters involved in the class action antitrust lawsuit against the UFC. He's also been a vocal proponent of a fighters association and one of the loudest, most insistent voices in favor of fighters' rights. And, the thing is, when people want to discredit those guys suing the UFC or the guys pushing for some kind of fighters association, the thing that they usually end up saying is that these guys are just broken down, retired, or near the end of their career fighters who are bitter about how their careers turned out and they're lashing out at everybody. But with Fitch, if he does become a WSOF champion and remains an active fighter in good standing in an organization that matters, I think that strengthens the position that he can talk to other fighters from. It kind of lends credence to the idea that these are not just guys angry about their careers that are now over. These are guys who are still active, still doing well, still finding success, and yet they've been around in the sport long enough to know what needs to change. It makes him somebody that people are more likely to listen to. That's why I think that this fight does really matter, not only for John Fitch's personal legacy, but for what he's trying to accomplish outside the cage. If he loses, however, and if he can never call himself any sort of champion in an organization that matters, then it lends credence to those detractors. It makes it seem like, yeah, they are just bitter ex-fighters. That's why this one could determine a lot how that conversation goes in the future. This one is worth paying attention to.